here when it comes to the results of this project on media councils in the digital age. We accomplished it with a lot of interesting results on surveys, on best practice, and we are very happy that we have you all here, in all the experts, the main experts who have helped to make this project a success, to have here and to have an exchange specifically with members of the European Parliament, but also other stakeholders. I see colleagues from the publishers, from UNESCO, and our other friends and stakeholders. So this is excellent news. Just for information, as I just said, we finished this first year project on media councils, and we are very happy that we can announce already that we have the second year ahead of us with a continuation, but also with some new directions, which we will discuss hopefully also today. The EFJ coordinated with the different consortium partners. I just mentioned them again. It was press or media councils from Ireland, from Finland, from Belgium, from Germany, and from Austria, together with the two universities from Brussels and from Barcelona. And all this has been supported by the Alliance of Independent Press Councils of Europe, which of course has been very, very useful to also help the multiplier effect. I will not say much, just 2 words, and that's trust is in all our mouths when we talk about the future of journalism these days. And we also know that trust does not only depend on journalists and journalist contents. It depends on the larger framework, on the political players. We have seen, I don't have to mention them, enough of them these last days. It depends on cultural issues and much more. But we think that one issue, and this is self-regulation, and the issue of press and media councils has actually not been enough in the on the agenda when it comes to trust. I just participated in a very interesting discussion led by the Reuters Institute in Oxford. They are discussing indicators, as you all know, on digital journalism. And I actually asked, what about self-regulation? What about media councils? And they did admit, yes, it is important, but it has not yet been discussed and researched by us enough. So I think there's also room for better cooperation from what comes from our results here to their results. And for that, we're also very happy that we have the universities, the academics here. But I would like now to introduce our first very small welcome, and we are very happy that we have MEPs. I will say a few words about them in a second. And first of all, I would like to give Audrius Perkauskas the word, the Deputy Head of Unit on Audiovisual and Media Services Policies from the European Commission, from DG Connect, who has helped us make this event and this project possible. So thanks, Audrius, for a short welcome and introduction.
Thank you, Renate. Good morning, colleagues. Indeed, let me say that we are proud of this project because not only it managed to achieve tangible results in this rather difficult year marked by the COVID pandemic, but also the nature of the results is varied, and all the results are very pertinent to today's media environment. Because this project combines different types of deliverables. In particular, it supports establishment of media councils or in those countries which do not have media councils yet, not in all countries which miss media councils currently, because of course the money is necessarily limited, but step by step the project will expand the family of media councils in Europe, and this is extremely valuable. Then there is the networking element, bringing all the councils together to exchange practices and to collaborate online. And then what I noted is, of course, a very interesting element of research into new areas of media, like automated news delivery, which is extremely pertinent in today's environment. So going from the project to the wider political context, I would mention just a couple of points. One is that we look at media councils and the presence of media councils in the context of rule of law report, because the Commission recognizes that media councils are an important part of media freedom and pluralism, let's call it infrastructure in Europe. So in the first rule of law report, the Commission mentioned the existence of media councils in a number of member states and the conditions for their activities. And indirectly, media councils feature also in the Commission's Democracy Action Plan, because one of the action areas of that plan is to stimulate exchange between media self-regulatory bodies and come up with possible recommendations how to strengthen media pluralism in Europe. So as you see, all in all, media councils are our partners across different activities, be it project work or policy initiatives, and this is why I welcome very much this exchange and look forward to continue working with you in the second year of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audrius, to put it all in a context, very rightly so. Oh, you're still talking? I hear you still talking, but anyway, putting it in a context also with regard to the rule of law, which of course is very important and a very good link to welcome our three ladies, MEPs. I would like to first give the word to Petra Kammerevert, who had some problems with her internet. I hope it will work. Just to give you a brief, Petra Kammerevert is vice chair of the group of Progressive Alliance and Socialist Democrats. She has been very active in the Culture Committee for years. She has also been active in Germany in the Broadcasting Council of the Public Service Broadcaster, so this issue is very known to her. She was the rapporteur on behalf of the Culture Committee on the Digital Service Act, so all these issues are very known to her. Dear Petra, are you all right? Can you give us a few introducing words? Yes, no. I see Thomas, her assistant, who doesn't look happy. Well, then we wait for Petra. Maybe we can hear her in a second. Then I would give the floor to Alexandra, hoping that Petra will be with us in 2 minutes. Alexandra, you are from the Greens actually, and you also have been very busy both on the rule of law, but also on you have been a rapporteur of the opinion on the framework of ethical aspects on artificial intelligence. So I'm sure you're specifically interested in the issue of news automation and what press councils have, if they have a say in that or not. So please, I'm very happy to give you the word.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me here to speak to this distinguished audience. This is really a great opportunity for me. I'm very grateful. I would like more to focus on, not on the media councils, because I'm not an expert on that, but on my role as a shadow rapporteur for the Digital Services Act, which can have great implications also for media. And this is what I would like to talk about more today, those aspects. And I would like to say that as a citizen, and as a shadow rapporteur for the digital services sector, I'm acutely aware of the importance of quality media and the recent developments in journalism as well, that are all very closely connected to the dynamics of social media. And I think we have all seen that in the past days in Washington and what happened to Capitol, what disinformation, what kind of damage disinformation can do to a vibrant democracy like the American one, and what the role of journalism is there. So first of all, I would like to thank you all for your very dedicated work under such increasingly difficult conditions. And there are 2 points I would like to make today, and that might seem a little bit off topic at first sight, but Renate mentioned trust and the larger framework in the beginning, so I'm totally convinced they're not. Because the future of your profession is based on credibility on the one hand, but also on a financially viable model on the other. And the viability of that financial model has been attacked by Facebook and Google's business model, which is based on targeted advertising. So advertising not based on context as it used to be, but on tracking citizens online and offline and using that kind of very private information to target ads to them. And 98% of the revenue of Facebook and 70% of the revenue of Google stems from that model. The problem is we have the chance to ban this model in the DSA and to prepare the path that advertising money can go back to quality media outlets. One of the problems that we have that not only Google and Facebook are against that for obvious reasons, but also a lot of European publishers are against that because they have been obliged to rely for part of their own funding on tracking advertising, on targeted advertising as well. And some publishers have their own interests in that area because they have invested in that activity. So I'm convinced that we need to ban targeted advertising in order to come back to reduce disinformation, because Facebook's model is to focus on, and Google's as well on YouTube, on polarizing content, which is harmful for our democracy. And if we want to get rid of this huge disinformation problem, we have to ban that kind of business models. So we have the chance to do that within the Digital Services Act. And I think we need to do it in order to curb disinformation and hateful speech and to bring advertising money flows back to quality media outlets. And I would really ask you to look into these aspects, to look into the financial aspects of your work. And if you are convinced, to get in touch with us and to support the campaign that we will have in order to ban targeted advertising, get more money back to quality media outlets. There's a short second point I would like to make, and this is drawing really on your experience with media councils. I have been proposing the idea of social media councils because we have seen in the last days how difficult it is. Who is going to make the decision if a sitting American president's Twitter account or Facebook account can be blocked or not? I don't think it is acceptable in a democracy that they had the CEO of a monopolistic corporation to take that decision. And whether we are in favor of that decision or not, that you can have different opinions on that, and we might be happy with this decision now, but it's totally not acceptable that it's just a CEO of a corporation to take that decision. What is not acceptable as well, that we can't just copy the media council, because media councils are self-regulatory bodies by the industry. But if you have an oligopolistic industry with basically 3 or 4 corporations, you can't do that because they will never attack their own business models. So what I'm proposing, together with David Kay, the former UN rapporteur for free speech, and other people, free speech advocates, are social media councils made up by civil society, a representation of experts for freedom of speech by media, academia, but also the minorities targeted by hateful speech, or women's organizations strongly targeted by hateful speech. Therefore, I would like you to ask you to help us with that idea. You have all that experience from the media councils. How can we enrich that idea? How can we put it forward in order to create a better information and media environment for everybody? Thank you very much. And I wish you
excellent.
This.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you very much. I think 2 very important issues, of course, viability and also the issue of social media council, which, by the way, will be much more focused in our second part. So I'm sure we will come back to you and discuss with you. Now I would like to introduce Ramona, who had some problems, family problems, and I'm even more happy that she is taking the time to be with us. Ramona Strugariu, she is the vice chair of Renew, and she has been working in the Libe committee, also very busy with the rule of law, a member of the media group and the shadow rapporteur on strengthening media freedom, disinformation and hate speech. So Ramona, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to honored to be in such a company. Yes, an emergency call from the school of my son. Things are still ongoing, so I would pass on my message, and with you apologies, I must leave afterwards because I'm not sure how things will evolve. So I may as well have to head to the hospital afterwards, but. Briefly, let me first congratulate EFJ for this pilot project, and I'm happy to hear that the initiative will continue because it is a tremendous need for media health and for democracy health overall for such projects. And I truly welcome that that under the new Creative Europe program, and I'm talking about the 2021-2027 framework, we have money specifically dedicated to journalists and journalistic projects. But I actually hope that with the use of pilot projects and the diversification of pilot projects, we will actually be able to identify even more sources of financing and continue to research and develop new tools for navigating through the digital age. Now, we have seen what the pandemic and the associated infodemic gave us lately, and how they amplified tremendously the disinformation crisis. Not that we hadn't had the issue before, we did have it. We were not maybe able to see it as clearly as we have seen it today. And I believe that under these circumstances, media literacy projects and tools can literally save lives. And we have seen it with certain with a certain impact that disinformation had in a number of states. It is vital that people are equipped with the right tools to allow them to identify credible news and stories, and to enhance their critical thinking in order to distinguish fact from fake. It is also vital that such information reaches people, because we have the problem of high quality information and news, and then we have the problem of how far this type of information and news reaches in deep state. And we have seen lately many examples where apparently it does not reach, whereas the boring truth has a limited area of expansion. Fake news roll up and they reach communities about 6 times faster. This is the reality that we are confronted with. I believe that this type of projects, and particularly media councils and well-functioning media councils, play a crucial role in promoting highly trained journalists. And this is an issue that, at least in a number of member states, maybe including mine, we have been confronted with. We need to set up the bar really high in terms of ethical standards in journalism, probably now more than ever, and to consider this. Also with consistent financial support, I would say, for this type of training. Yes, self-regulation for the profession creates a stronger and a more independent media. Certain countries and certain media councils in some countries need to learn how to do this. And I have seen such media councils, including the one in my country, maybe strongly politicized at some point, maybe not as efficient as they should at some point, maybe lost to some point because they didn't know exactly how to address this. Then with respect to regaining trust in media, I would also like to mention that we should be very careful about creating automated tools that select certain material based on digital indicators, because such solutions can turn to some point against us, let's think that hackers and fake news content creators breach the technical mechanisms behind the solution. So what happens next? Next, well, a bit of a chaos. Algorithm cannot tell apart truth from fact. We always have to remember that they can only recognize man-made markers. And unless we are absolutely sure about the safety of those markers, I believe it is dangerous and great care should be considered when moving ahead. And then last but not least, because my colleague already addressed DSA and DMA, I'm looking forward to the final products, and we will make our contribution there as well, about ethics and journalists in general. I would like to address this from a very clear political perspective, because we always talk about citizens, but we tend not to talk about politicians. And here I think there are two key words that we always have to bear in mind: facilitate and refrain from political perspective. And when I see facilitate, I speak about access to information. And I have seen how, and we have seen how certain governments addressed this and provided access to information for journalists during the crisis. We have seen how they addressed the requests for access to information, and I must say that in certain states, member states, this was a bit disastrous because the tendency was to instead of facilitating and communicating, to refrain and restrain access to information. This is extremely dangerous. Then there are countries, including mine, which have strong legislation on access to information, but that legislation is not respected by the public institutions and by the politicians. And this should happen definitely everywhere, not only in specific countries, but everywhere. If someone really wants, and politicians really want to do something useful directly for ethics and journalists, they should, on the one hand, facilitate this access to information, but refrain for directly investing financially in media to turn it into a political tool. Because another aspect is how politicians always are tempted and tend to use and instrumentalize media for their own political purposes. And this again is a big problem, I think, for trust of citizens in journalism and quality journalism, and for the quality of information as well. Not to talk about investigative journalism, who always has to suffer because of that. And every time a team of investigative journalists reveals very important information related to a politician, politicians are upset, and then certain medias would comment and interpret maybe in a direction defending that politician. I, as a politician, said that media should stop defending politicians, because this is not the role of media. Media should simply speak the truth and reveal what it is to reveal, regardless of who's in power. But then I'm first speaking about ourselves, that we should truly refrain from trying to use information in such a way. These are my comments. Looking forward to elaborating on this later on as well, using some of the excellent conclusions further on in building good practice on this, because this is how we build up democracy and how we strengthen democracy. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Ramona. You said it all, and it's all very important. And you see in the program, we will be discussing media literacy. Of course, ethical standards is top. And also in the next project, there is specific money allocated for new press councils, because you're right, the ones we are here as our consortium partners, they're doing well. But in many countries, we have rather very bad or no media councils at all. And I know you have been doing a lot on journalism and safety of journalists. And I would also like to say, since there have been so many problems regarding safety of journalists and when it comes to demonstrations and relation to the police, many press councils have asked for a better understanding of the role of journalism vis-a-vis police and vis-a-vis civil society. But as time is running, thank you, Ramona, and good luck with you also on your personal side. And I hope Petra now is with us, and we are happy to listen to you. Petra, does it work? Petra?
Hello?
Yes. Not so good.
Okay, I try to hold my speech, and if you cannot hear me because of bad connection, please give me any kind of sign. So, first of all, dear Ricardo, dear Renate, dear colleagues, dear participants, thank you for the invitation. I think this is a very crucial and important issue we have to discuss today. And I think it's hard to conceive of the European press and media landscape without the Press and Media Council. They act as a guide and ethical compass, but also as a vocal lobby against state intervention with the aim to safeguard the independent press and media. It is the structure and nature that is key to the role press and media councils play, which can be troublesome at times, but in the end, it's made effective and balanced by the integration of civil societies. What is more, the independence and non-governmental organization are fundamental in order to fulfill the task as a critical observer, guardians of independence, and for monitoring the fulfillment of the program mandate. This is a way in order to guarantee for plurality and diversity. A broad range of social interests must be involved in this Press and Media Council. As I see it, plurality and diversity are not only goals per se, but form and basis for the satisfactory outputs. In the revised Audiovisual Media Service Directive, which came into force in 2019, a special concern of mine was therefore to legally anchor the non-governmental and independent status of the members of these councils. In the past, we often had to conclude that these demands are not met in practice. Here we wanted to remedy the situation, and time will tell us if adjustment will be needed in the future. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic poses not only a global health crisis, also a critical moment, providing how small the dividing line between public trust and distrust toward the press and media, and supposedly between truth and fake news is a age. Here and now, can deliver by doing fact-based, unemotional reporting so needed to build trust in the work of researchers and field experts from around the world. And yes, by always their critical voices were measures taken in the usual scrutiny. Examples like this demonstrate us in the work of journalists, whether in a newspaper, audiovisual media, private or public, or grassroots internet blog is not getting any easier. This makes it all the more essential to uphold journalistic standards as independence, pluralism, and of course quality and truthfulness. These standards set decent journalism, good press and media apart from others. Hence, the work of Press and Media Council is indispensable for maintaining the character and quality of the European media landscape, as they work to ensure that quality criteria are maintained in press reporting. In this respect, digital tools naturally offer a chance for the impact of a Press and Media Council work, as they can, for example, greatly improve the possibilities for and participation of citizens to report inappropriate media coverage, but also make these processes more transparent to everyone. Many journalists take their daily work to point out the inept process of self-regulation, for example, in business, and to inform the public about shortcomings, to shake up, and so on. We can draw from this that self-regulation is always the most credible and achieves the best results when it's fully internalized and consistently practiced by those who impose these rules on themselves. Yet, we also know that those who simply pass over criticism again and again eventually lose credence. As an EU parliamentarian, I'm naturally keen to take away something tangible from EU project of this kind for our own legislative work, but I will keep this brief. On the one hand, we must ensure that the press and media in all EU member states and beyond can do their jobs absolutely freely, and in particular, where we already know that freedom of the press, the rule of law, and the independence of judiciary are being undermined. To this end, I believe it would be useful to set up additional funding instruments and European projects, especially those tailored to support the local press and media. And on the other hand, we need to push forward political efforts for critical media education from European level and provide European citizens with the necessary digital skills and tools. And therefore, I'm now looking forward to today's discussion, and of course also to the results of the pilot project, and hope we will see more pilot projects like this in the future. Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petra. I think it got better and better, the quality. Thank you very much for stressing the importance of independent and transparent self-regulation, which indeed is so important for the trustworthiness for the press. And you also mentioned the specific situation in COVID. Interestingly enough, or maybe not interesting enough, there had been less complaints when it came to COVID reporting. And I think that's very important to notice, as we know many people are more and more against journalists these days. So yes, you also discussed the issue of digital funding and other very important issues. Thank you for that. Since time is running, I will now immediately go to our panel and thank all our MEPs again for their very insightful contributions and for their interest and continued interest, and for being with us and possibly also sharing in the Q&A afterwards some more questions. Our panel is called Media Self-Regulation in Europe, a model to protect media freedom and encourage professionalism in journalistic ethics in the digital world. It sounds very good. We have four distinguished experts, and I'm happy to start with Ricardo Gutierrez, my dear colleague, the General Secretary of the European Federation of Journalists, who has also been himself active in the French-speaking Belgian Press Council. So you know what you're talking about, Ricardo. You also know what's at stake, having the European overview and having been the coordinator of this project. So tell us, what do we need in 5 minutes max, regaining trust in media? How can we get there? It's a challenge.
I'll be short, Renate. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking part in this discussion on a subject that is extremely important, as you said, Renate, for the credibility of the media. As you have understood, our project, our EU project, aims to adapt journalistic self-regulation to the challenges of the digital age. And I should say that we are very proud of this project, of this European model of journalistic self-regulation, which will contribute, I think, to the development of quality journalism, and which also contributes to the fight against disinformation. For the first time ever, an EU pilot project brings together the energies of the Representative Organization of Journalists, the EFJ, the European Press Councils, and 2 universities, as you said, Renate, and the European Commission, and in particular DG Connect, whom I thank, has trusted us for a first 1-year project. The same project will continue to work on the same topic this year. what are the challenges for the project partners? First of all, making press councils better known to the public. That's the first challenge. Helping to resolve confidence as well, confidence in the media by pushing them to respect ethical principles. And helping to create, as you said, Renate, new press councils where they do not yet exist. The speakers who follow me will present some of the very concrete results already achieved, such as how to respond to the rise of robot journalism, the problem of automated content production, how to better educate young people about the media, how young journalists perceive professional ethics. As I said, I'm not going to be long, but I would like to stress the strong commitment of journalist organizations, which have often been at the origin of the creation of press councils. As the representatives of the profession, I can assure you that we strongly defend professional ethics. In our view, press councils are an essential tool to promote responsible journalism, credible and trustworthy journalism. Now, the situation is rather worrying. Trust in the news has fallen in most countries since 2015. Just to give you some figures, in Germany, the proportion that trusts the most news most of the time has fallen from 60% in 2015 to 47% in 2019. In Finland, the figure has dropped from 68% to 59%. These are just a few figures to indicate the seriousness, I would say, of the situation. And it's not just about the media. What happened a few days ago in the United States is very worrying. And it's not the degenerates who invaded the capital that worries me. What worries me is what has mobilized them, the lies, the so-called alternative facts, the systematic distortion of reality, the mistrust against institution, against science, against those in power, against the media. We all know that this global mistrust, as Hannah Arendt wrote so well, is the breeding ground for totalitarian regime. So at a time when we most need professional journalists and reliable information to counter disinformation, public confidence in the media is declining. Why is it? Academic research showed that people's perception of journalism and the news media is deeply influenced by their perception of other institutions. Richard Fletcher from Reuters Institute, you already mentioned Reuters Institute, Renate. Richard Fletcher says that if trust in political institutions falls, then trust in the news media is dragged down with it. And if the political situation becomes more polarized, even the best news coverage can come to be seen as biased by large sections of the population. What we need to regain trust is to do our job properly as journalists. People expect us to report in a timely manner, helping citizens to understand the world around them and holding power to account. Richard Fletcher says that people with low trust in the news media don't want it to be fundamentally different. They just want it to be better. In other words, what we need urgently is stronger journalism, deeper journalism, better journalism. We in the FJ have always believed that disinformation is not fought with anti-fake news laws or other provisions that will limit freedom of expression. We consider that the best antidote to disinformation is quality journalism, stronger journalism, ethical journalism, of course, media literacy for all, media pluralism, and above all, a policy of increased transparency of those in power. The most transparency there is in public affairs, the less disinformation there is. We also believe that journalists have a role to play, of course. They too must be more transparent in their work. They must take more account of the public interest. They must be more careful than ever before to respect ethical rules. And that is why we must support self-regulation and press councils. Any other strategy can be dangerous. That is why we are against projects that aim to certify the media, to label them as credible media or non-credible media. What we need is to give citizens the skills to see for themselves which information is credible or not. Press councils are one such tool. They are pluralist and independent and all work for the benefit of citizens. The Press Council is an instrument fundamentally at the service of civil society. We believe that journalists are increasingly aware of the need to respect ethics in order to regain the trust of citizens. Once again, we thank the European Commission for helping us to consolidate this tool at the service of citizens, at the service of respect for the truth, which is, I believe, more needed than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you very much for some very interesting insights. I think you're absolutely right. We are at a crossroads at the moment, and the happenings in the United States with the so-called mob entering democratic institutions, the police letting them in, all that based on conspiracies and lies, shows the incredible challenge we face, because these mobs are part of the citizens, are part of the people we have to get back to. And media councils, of course, is one way, like audience engagement, we mention more and more when it comes to journalism, to try to engage them. And we know it's very difficult because we are living in an ever more polarized society. But that's why also media literacy is so important, to which we talk a little bit later. So lots of food for thought. Thank you very much. And I would like now to represent Lauri Haapanen, who is a lecturer in Finland, and I think I cannot pronounce the name of the university, Jyväskylä.
I can help you, University of Jyväskylä.
You make it better. Lauri, thank you very much. We have had you already a little while ago. You addressed the theme of news automation and self-regulation with our digital expert group, and it had been very interesting. So just before I give you the floor, you know, there is also a chat item. I hadn't mentioned it. We all know there is a Q&A afterwards, but since there are a lot of people talking at the moment, if you have any questions, I would open the floor after Lauri, because before we get to the other two speakers, so we do not have too much talk, just let me know and I'll give you the floor afterwards. So now I'm very, very happy to welcome Lauri and give us some insights from the north, where very often things are a bit more advanced, more transparent. For us, still a subject which is rather complicated and new, also dealing with algorithms. We also ask for more transparency, but sometimes we do not even know exactly what you ask for. Thank you, Lauri.
Thank you very much. I will share some slides with you. Let's see if this works now. Can you see my slides now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here's the title of our research that we've done here in Finland, Media Councils in the Emerging Era of News Automation. So we really wanted to help media councils and figure out how they should they already somehow respond to the news automation, the use of algorithms and personalization and this kind of issues. And in a nutshell, we have these three research questions. First, we figured out or I conducted this research, so maybe I can say that I figured out how media councils has responded news automation in their guidelines, in their codes of ethics on European level, and more widely on universally too. Then second research question is, what is the present state of the art in news automation? And finally, what kind of self-regulatory actions this state of the art might call for? So I went the results quickly through, and we have, as mentioned, published our report some month ago. So there are more details about the data, who we have interviewed, and our results are more elaborated there. But first, something about the guidelines. There's not so much to say. I went through some 500 guidelines, not only on European from European press councils, but worldwide, and almost nothing came up. So there is no news automation algorithms, and this kind of keywords are not mentioned in the ethical or in the codes of ethics yet. However, media councils are, we can say that they are waiting and watching. Here's one quote from one chair of one European media council, and he said that news automation is more or less non-existent in their media market, and also personalization is very rare. However, about 1/3 of the respondents said that they have already discussed on some level about the challenges that news automation and personalization and use of algorithms may bring. So it's more interesting then to figure out what is the state of the art of news automation at the moment. And I think here we have to begin by defining what we mean by news automation. One definition is that it refers to all kind of algorithmic tools that can facilitate journalistic work, some part of the journalistic work. For example, making alerts to journalists that there is something newsworthy happening, facilitating gathering or analyzing of material. It can help in transcribing, proofreading, editing photos, and so on, A/B testing, distributing content, and so on. And these kind of algorithmic tools are already quite widely in use in European media houses and media outlets. But I think we can plausibly argue that in these solutions, there's always the human component involved in this process, more or less, and that ensures that the ethical requirements are met. So in my research and in this report, I'm more interested in the second kind of news automation that I named full-blooded news automation, that refers to news robots that independently handles the entire process from selecting the topic, gathering information, analyzing what to write in the article, and then write the text in human language and publish it without human intervention. And here, what I find out is that algorithms already make lots of news about weather, sports, elections, financial reports, and so on domains. But at the moment, these current applications are actually more modest than the hype around them. We are talking quite a lot about news automation, but these real solutions are not on so high level. Here are a couple of quotes from software developers. They, for example, say that they are not doing at the moment or in the near future any editorials, but instead their systems, their news automation systems, they are making quite basic data-driven and highly repetitive content that scales to many dimensions. And other software developer pointed out that their systems use exactly the same data sets as human journalists. They are not scraping information from internet, but they are using data sets that some human has first said that this is quality data, you can use it. So it's not so secret or shadow process at all. And basically, what is the state of the art, or where the news automation is used mostly at the moment is some specific visual or numerical parts of an article, for example, infographics, and then the read more recommendations, that is these lists in the end of the stories that are based on the user's online behavior and also some information that the user has entered to the software. So my conclusion in this report is that there's maybe not an urgent need for guidance, but at the same time we must keep our eyes open. And why we should do that, I have 4 points. One is that media councils actually do not have a comprehensive picture of what's going on, and that's mainly because, as I found out, it was extremely difficult to get answers from large media operators. They just didn't answer my questionnaires, which were very personalized questionnaires, but they didn't answer. And one colleague of mine said that that's because big number of texts are already produced automatically, but publishers want to keep quiet because people are afraid of this kind of automated content, and that's why they don't want to reveal what they are doing now or what are their future plans. Then there are things happening in the field of journalism, and of course innovations can spill over, so to say, from nearby industries, especially because the same software developers that make news automation systems, these news automation systems are only one part of their business and not the biggest part, but they also do online marketing and these kind of other domains. And for example, personalization is much more common in online marketing than in journalism, so it can spill over from there to journalism quite easily, I would say. And then the 4 point, I quote there this quite famous futurological phrase that the effect of technological progress is often overestimated in a short run, as we often do when we have this hype about news automation. We have talked about it several decades, and there's not so concrete solutions yet. But then this Amara's law goes on saying that we tend to underestimate this progress in a long run. And I think that's one point why we should really keep our eyes open. And that's why in this report, I identified 3 points that we must not overlook when we discuss news automation. First of all, data has so far been the bottleneck in the development, because these news automation systems really need systematic numerical data sets. But in research, there's a lot of work going on, and researchers and software developers try to find out ways to utilize new types of data sets, free-form texts, audio files, video files, and so on. And once they can do that, we can take a leap forward in news automation. But these kind of data sets cannot usually be produced within newsroom, but it requires that we have a collaboration between several experts from many different fields. And this takes us to the second point, that is agency, that these software developers really need to internalize their role as part of this editorial production chain. No matter are they integral part of the editorial team, or are they external designers and the media only buys the system or purchase the system from outside or produce it in-house. No matter, but they really need to understand that they are part of this production chain, and therefore they need to adhere to a journalistic value base. And the third point is transparency. In research, it's often mentioned that transparency is the key in maintaining and also restoring the trusting relationship between news media operators and their audience. So I think we must be transparent in the use of algorithms, news automation, personalization, and these kind of solutions. And finally, this transparency is a good way to differentiate journalistic media from social media giants. who are often not so transparent about the information they are gathering and how they are exploiting this information. So I conclude by saying here and in my report that media councils should monitor carefully the development on the field of news automation, what's going on there. They should ensure that they offer a realistic opportunity for the audience to complain, because quite often the procedures at the moment are so strict that it can be complicated or nearly impossible for audience to complain, for example, about news automation and personalization, which are issues that you really, or aspects that you really cannot easily see if they are taking place or not. So this takes us to this third point, that media councils should be sensitive to silent signals and really act on their own initiative, not waiting for complaints, but act on their own initiative. And my final line here is, or claim is, that if the media councils do not take the lead in regulation of news automation, perhaps someone else will do it, and be it national legislators, the EU, or platform companies. This could put the freedom of the press in jeopardy, perhaps. But yeah, thanks for listening me, and the report, you can find it from this website. And if you have any other comments later on, don't hesitate to contact me. Here's my email address. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauri. If you get rid of the, yeah. Thank you very much. I think this has been a most useful insight in news automation. Could you try? Yeah. Sorry, just. You're trying to get it out. Anyway, yes, I think it just shows how important it is to deal with the issue. You said that news automation is not yet done for the editorial, but I'm sure this will be rather quicker than later. And it's very, very important, as you rightly say, that the media councils deal with the issue and not anybody else. So I'm also very happy that the Alliance of Independent Press Councils of Europe is listening to that and dealing with that. And maybe what's been done already now in Finland is already done in other countries as well, but that this exchange is so urgent. And for that, I'm very happy that we have the second part of the project to deal with that much more. As I said before, I don't see in the chat, but anybody has a specific question now to Lauri or to Ricardo? I mean, there's a lot of food for thought. There's a lot of information you gave. Also, question of data. I found very interesting that software developers need to adhere to journalistic standards. I don't know if that has been happening already, but that's also for the EFJ something to deal with. Any question? Yes, Alexandra?
If I may, very shortly, because I'm very interested in the topic, because I sit on the AI committee in Parliament as well. I'm the coordinator there for my party. Who are the companies that are developing the systems, the algorithm, and so on? And what kind of oversight or control do you have in order to ensure transparency? Just very briefly.
Lauri, you are muted.
Yes, now I'm not. Okay, yeah, these companies are, for example, AX Semantics, United Robots, and Narrativa. These are European companies that are doing, among other things, news automation systems, and then selling their products and these systems to media operators. These names are mentioned in this my report, and I just put the link to this report to the chat, so you can find the names and the CEOs I interviewed from this report.
Excellent. Any other questions? because otherwise then we move on to another issue which we already discussed and which is very important, the issue of media literacy, specifically for the youth in the age of disinformation. We all use these challenges, and I'm very happy to have Alexandra Warzilek, the chairman of the Austrian Press Councils, to give us some more insights. Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Renate. As you just mentioned, and as you mentioned already before, media literacy is a key factor for strengthening our democracy, but also for strengthening the trust and the credibility in professional media. So I was very happy to be able, together with the German Press Council, to develop this kind of a media literacy toolkit for teachers and schools. So the whole story is based on 9 different cases that have been decided by various European press councils. 4 countries have been involved, besides Austria and Germany, also Finland, Switzerland, and Belgium. So it's 5 countries. And we created this kind of role plays based on these decisions from the press councils. And of course, for didactic purpose, we had to change the cases slightly, but generally speaking, they are very close to the decisions the press councils made. And besides these 9 case studies and role plays, the toolkit consists also of 2 explanatory videos. One video is about discrimination and our anti-discrimination clauses in the professional code of ethics of the press councils. And the second video is about the correct reporting on suicide coverage. And we will continue with the role plays, with the cases. This year we try to get new cases. We put weight on cases which, or on decisions which have been related to topics which are of interest for young people. So some of the cases involved also young people. And besides that, we tried also to be very topical. So it was a mix of being topical and of having topics connected to young people, to the group of young people. And this year we are also trying to go to schools and promote those role plays and cases. So the idea is that representatives from various press councils will travel to other countries and present that role plays and play the role plays with the students, just to promote it a bit more. And we are also trying to contact ministries for education and schools to put some light on our toolkit, which is it is quite interesting, I think. And also the feedback from the other press councils involved in the alliance of the press councils was very good. They said that the cases are very practical and nice. So I'm happy to promote it also this year and to continue with this project. We are also planning to do 2 more explanatory videos. So I think the package is quite nice. Maybe we should work a little bit on the promotion now.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Interesting indeed. And I think it would be really good to get this information out. I know there are many other groups like lie detectors and others who are dealing with journalism in schools at national level, at international level, and the more we can share the experience, the better. So any information you have, we have it already on a Press Council's EU website, but maybe we can even disseminate it more, and then of course go deeper in the second part. It's been very interesting and actually quite positive. Are there any specific questions? Because otherwise we will just give the floor now, last but not least, to David Domingo, and afterwards we have some more comments and questions and answers. David, I'm very happy that you will talk a little bit more generally about the survey the university, the ULB, Université Libre of Brussels, did when it comes to media councils and the perceptions of them, but also to discuss a little bit specifically on young journalists and what their ethical challenges are in 2021. Thank you, David.
Yes, I actually will present two different projects that have been done in the context of this project. The survey was coordinated by our colleagues in Barcelona, by Blanquerna, and we together designed the questions, and they addressed journalists and members of press councils, also CEOs of media companies, but I will focus on very specific few of the highlights of that survey, and then the results of the focus groups we did in Belgium with students who had recently been interns in news media companies and who had the first practical challenges with dealing with the ethics they were learning in the journalism schools. I'll try to share my screen if that works. Voila. First, in line, this study conducted by my colleagues Pere Massip, Jaume Suau, and Carlos Ruiz. Jaume is around us, with us today, and I must tell you, I will have to leave soon after the presentation. So if there is questions, I will kindly ask Jaume to take them. This survey covered, on one hand, 450 journalists in 9 European countries and 61 members of press councils in 6 European countries. And on the first side, the journalists, they when we ask them if they know the code of ethics, you can see in the screen that there is a vast majority of the journalists who are confident to say they know well or very well the code of ethics in their country, or more generally the code of ethics proposed by the Federation of Journalists. And the difference by age or gender are not very significant. Maybe what is most interesting is that the young people between 26 and 35, if you allow me to call them young, they are the ones who are a bit more self-critical about their knowledge of the code of ethics. This contrasts with the perspective of members of the press councils, because they think that the knowledge of the code of ethics by journalists is good, but as you see, the central column, the one that says they know the code of ethics, but the knowledge of rules may be limited, is a bit bigger than in the case of the journalists. And also that changes between countries, and it's Ireland and Finland where there is more, they are more sure, more reassured that the journalists know well their codes of ethics, and in other countries, the members of the press councils are a bit more critical about that. We asked as well the journalists whether they knew of the existence of media councils, and that there was a media council in their country, and the response is satisfactory to the degree of 68% as an average. But there was still 17% and 13% who didn't know it or said, I'm not sure. So that could mean there is some work to do within the profession still to give more visibility to media councils, and that varied between countries, and you can check the results in the reports that actually I wanted to say too that these reports will be published on the website this Friday. So if you are interested in seeing them, they will be online very soon. What is reassuring is to see, as you see in the second graphic, that overwhelmingly most journalists consider that it's important to have a media council. Another big part of the survey explored the attitudes of the journalists regarding ethics in the digital age, and there was very mixed bag of responses, as you see here. They were evenly split between those who think the code of ethics needs to be rethought and updated to adapt to the new challenges. 30% also said that there's no need to adapt it, and still another part of the respondents who had a hard time to decide. And that is interesting because in terms of men and women, men tend to say that the code of ethics is adapted to the digital and ethical challenges more than women, but you see that it's 38 and 25. So there are still more that feel that maybe it needs adaptation, or they are not sure about it. And regarding the age, those who are more reassured about the validity of the code of ethics nowadays is the people in their 30s and the people in their 50s. Is the young people and people in their 40s who are more skeptical or have a hard time to position themselves. If we look at this similar question from the perspective of the media councils, they are much more sure that the current code of ethics are responding correctly to the new ethical challenges. And by countries, you see among the members of these press councils, the degree of reassurance about these varies greatly. Flanders, Wallonia, and Germany are the ones who are more sure about the adaptations they have done in the last few years. So I will, without interruption, pass to the second study for the sake of brevity. And here we focused specifically on young journalists, and with a different method. It was not a quantitative study. This was focus groups where we gathered 40 students from different universities here in the French-speaking part of Belgium. And we will extend this first pilot study to other countries in the second year of our project. The idea was to meet these students and see to what extent ethics is present in what ways in the process of entering the profession. So we interviewed them right after they finished their internships, and we wanted to see how do they deal with the concept of journalism ethics, and how does that shape their professional identity. The first thing to say is that in French there's an important distinction between deontology and ethics. And deontology is the concept that defines the set of collective professional standards that regulate the profession. And ethics has a much more individual and personal connotation. So the students could understand the difference between them, but they tended to blur the boundaries. And they had very different ways to describe what deontology and ethics meant for them. But in general, as you see here, the words that came in the discussion was mainly about something that guides them, something that is a tool, something that constrains, but at the same time protects their work, and that gives credibility. The variety of the responses was very interesting, because they are very close to having learned theoretically that in the school, and despite that, they already have very different ways to attach themselves to it. And the main thing that we found is that for them, deontology and ethics is a constant negotiation, a negotiation with the context around them, their colleagues and their sources, and that leads to tensions, as I will explain in a moment. They tend to understand that their decisions about ethics cannot be detached from the editorial identity of the media they were working in, the expectations that are put on them regarding what they need to produce, but also their personal values. So all these different aspects make deontology a process that is a complex negotiation in everyday life for the journalists, and that implied for them that it's flexible, that ethics doesn't have a solution that fits all, and that it's deliberative. It's something that we built in the process of discussing specific given problems in a specific given moments with a specific given context. This, of course, leads to tensions, and the students were very honest about sharing the anxiousness they have felt in some situations. Deontology is an object of tension because they don't control all the decisions, and things like the right to privacy, if it's put in pressure by the profitability and productivity of the media, when the editor-in-chief is asking them, we need to publish this photo because that's going to generate clicks, that makes them realize that making decisions on deontology is not easy, and they acknowledge that difficulty. In their daily practice, then that leads to interactions that can be tense with their peers, editors-in-chief notably, but also with their sources in the context of the relationship of journalists with PR strategies. And being an intern in that context doesn't make it easy, because they see themselves as the ones who have less power to defend their ideas or their position in the context of a newsroom. Despite that, they were they had very clear ideas about what is good journalism, and they were very judgmental about their own, the quality of their work, the quality of their peers, and they expect higher standards in the profession. They actually shared some étonnement, on dirait en français. They were appalled by the lack of awareness of deontological rules by some of their older peers in the newsroom, and that for us was a sign that they take deontology serious, and even if it's hard for them to define it clear and to apply it in everyday life, they cherish it and they think it's important, and it's one of the core aspects of their identity. Finally, we asked them as well, like in the survey, what do you think of the evolution of journalism, and is it a challenge for journalism ethics? They agreed that it's often hard to find answers in the deontological code to specific problems that new media is making them face in everyday life, especially social networks. Social media was coming back very recurrently as a place where they had very difficult moments to find safe ground in the deontological codes. And I think that it's good that in the second year of the project, we will devote more attention to those challenges. And they perceive this a moment of reinvention of the profession. They may perceive the norms as more outdated than older colleagues eventually, but they still defend we need them, and we need to see how they adapt to the contemporary challenges. So that was some few inputs from our study. Here you see the team of people who contributed to do these focus groups and to analyze the data, and Florian Tixier is here in the meeting in case you want to discuss the rest of if you have questions about it. But I invite you to read the full reports on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. That was a lot of interesting food for thought, both on the issue of young journalists and the different, I haven't thought about it, different concepts of ethics, deontology, but also about the dealing of media councils. I will not repeat it now because we do not have a lot of time. David told me he has to leave soon. So are there any immediate questions or comments to those two studies? Then I would like to have them first before we go into a general discussion. Anybody? No. Well then, thank you, David. Thank you a lot. I think there's really a lot of interesting stuff we certainly will continue to deal with. I think there are a few people who would like to give a general comment. I heard that Adrien from Russia would like to say something. I think Adeline, who has been following very closely from UNESCO the project. Adeline, it would also be great if you say just a few words, the first impressions from project 1 to 2, and maybe Peter as well. But first I give the word to our Russian colleague, please.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a kind of an improvisation. It's just to tell you about the Russian Council, Press Council, that we, together with Nadia Ashgihina, I think most of people here knows her personally. We joined this body really recently, and we hope to work within for the upcoming 5 years, and it's just a short presentation because probably people don't know about the existence of such body. It's a real genuine public organization which consists mainly of very respected members, well-known people, journalists, lawyers, really well known in the professional community. But unfortunately, the activity of this body is mainly the conflict situation touching the ethics, the conflict between, it's a kind of compliance, few dozen compliance per year against media. And all this situation are started in depth, and the discussions of council members they are very serious and lively, anime. And I can say now, because I assist a few times in this kind of decisions, that all these decisions are made impartial and correct. But unfortunately, the reaction from media in Russia, especially state-owned media, when the council decision is directed against them, there's this decision. They don't appreciate it, telling, so what? What a big deal. I don't know why, probably because of the institution of reputation in Russia is really weak and undeveloped. I don't know. Probably it may be may have another impact if the council will develop another activities. I think not only this activity of judging or taking decision on conflict situation when it's a case of this or another publication, but doing something more important. But now Mikhail Fedotov, who is one of the president of this council, he created the chair, UNESCO chair on the Higher School of Economics, and I hope he will develop other activities, because I want to repeat that is really the genuine public body, not governmental body. It's really important in the present Russia situation. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andres. I think it's very important to give an outlook a bit outside of Europe, and it also shows if whatever press council can be as good as, if it's not embedded in an environment that allows its independence, it's very difficult. And that's why we have to be all very vigilant and of course help you in Russia where we can. So that's been good. Is there any other comments? I don't want to force it upon anybody. We are at the end anyway. Adeline, thank you. And then Peter.
Hi, everyone. So thanks a lot, Renate. Thanks to everyone for having organized this webinar. Very interesting to hear about all of these results, and congratulations for, well, first of all, for the results. And second, for the new year, the new project year 2. I think it's really fantastic. As you know, I mean, this is a project for me. And for those who don't know me, I'm working for UNESCO for the Brussels office, and working for the division, I mean, for the communication and information sector, working on freedom of expression. And we have long been supporting and promoting media self-regulation because of course, of its benefits in terms of media freedom. And for those who know, it's also like a project that is very close to my heart. Like, I'm really, really happy to see that it's doing very well. And I don't want to repeat. I mean, one thing I want to say that for us, what is really important is as well to use this project and this experience in our work in other regions. We are working right now also with the European Federation of Journalists in the Western Balkans, where we do support press councils. And I think this experience that you're gathering, all these, for instance, this presentation about news automations, the need to work on new standards, etc., are really relevant and can be very useful. I also think there is such a need for more clarity and information about how press councils are functioning. And I think the results on this new website that has been launched with all of this information is really, really useful. And of course, as always, I have a lot of questions, and I just want to keep a few, and I don't know who will be able to actually answer. I just want as well to say one thing in relation to what was said with the MEP Geese in relation to this, the Digital Service Act, and also this discussion in relation to social media council. This is also something at UNESCO that we're following very closely, and we are actually starting a new project, but it's entitled Social Media for Peace, where we're planning to really work with social media platform on the monitoring of potential harmful content, and get more insight about how we are actually trying to see how to better curb potential harmful content and work with platforms. But I think the experience of press council promoting self-regulation within the media is extremely relevant. And there is always, for me, one of the big questions is how press council are dealing with this definition of journalism online. Because, I mean, when we go to there was always some discussion how much press councils are dealing with the content online. But then when we go to social media, how do you make this distinction between what is journalistic content, what is not journalistic content, and what is actually the content that should be taken over by the press councils? Because it's up to them then or not to decide what is this journalistic content that they want to take part of. And also for them, it can become a burden. And here I just want to conclude with this, because here again, I think for press councils that are already under difficult financial situation, and this we really need to say and remind, making them as well in charge of content that is, I mean, much more journalistic content potentially, because that could be on the social media platform, is also like really a complicated area. So I wanted to get a bit more, like to hear more a bit from the press council about what they think about that. And my second question, very quickly, is in relation to the independence of press and media councils. We had this conversation at the start of the first project about what could be and what would be the criteria to actually define better the independence of press and media councils. And I was wondering where we stand in that area at the end of year one. Sorry for too many questions.
Thank you very much, Adeline. We should actually start the Zoom now to respond to your very good questions, which is not possible. But still, I also would like to thank you, because you have actually been extremely helpful for us throughout the project in helping us. And as you rightly say, we have a common project on trust in media in the Balkan. And of course, it's very important to transfer all that knowledge. We have a colleague from Serbia, Dejan, here with us, and he certainly agrees with that. Before I give the floor to anybody who would like to respond on both this very important issue on what's journalist content and who is dealing with that, the issue of social media, of independence, and indeed something we haven't discussed that, which are the finances, which is very important. And I'm not sure if we have the response here, but maybe Peter Knapen, who has been very active throughout the project as well, and he's from the Flemish part of the press councils. Peter, you can already say a few things towards what Adeline said, and then maybe we have somebody else who is eager to say a few words. Thank you, Adeline, and welcome, Peter.
Okay, thank you. The questions of Adeline, I would like to mention that we, with the Flemish Press Council of Belgium, did a comparative study, a comparative survey of 28 or 32, I don't remember, press councils around the world, and also the results of this survey you can find on the website presscouncils.eu. The survey was about the way that press councils are organized, that they work, etc. And one of the questions was also, how can press councils guarantee and prove their independence? It's a very difficult question. You can see it as financial independence, and yeah, of course you need money to work with a press council. And by whom? Who are you financed? That's one of the questions. You have you have different models. Press councils financed by media organizations, press councils financed by media organizations and journalist associations, or partly by subsidies of the government. You can always say when you're financed by media organizations or by the government, there will be influence. All press councils guaranteed, as in the study, that there is no kind of influence. Sorry. But I think that the answer that we mostly heard was that you have to prove your independence in your daily work by the decisions you make about complaints. And when people see, sometimes people say, oh, you will always, your decisions will always be in favor of the journalists. It's not true. You can see that it is not true in the decisions of press councils about complaints. So that's one thing. And another thing is that you need, I think, to prove your independence, checks and balances in your organization. Checks and balances between, and that's what the representative of the Greens in Germany already said about self-regulation, for instance, for social media, that in a monopolist situation, it's very difficult to do. But when you have the different competitors, competitive organizations, media organizations in your press council, and you can guarantee checks and balances between journalists, between media organizations, and with also representatives of civil society in the press council, then I think that's also one thing to guarantee the independence, that you have a lot of ideas, a lot of points of view in press council that can be discussed. We, for instance, we always decide by consensus in our press council. We have 36 members. You have very small press councils with 5, 6, 7 members who take decisions. But this, I think these 2 or 3 things that prove your independence in your daily work, guarantee that you have a lot of checks and balances within your press council, and be transparent. Transparency and representativeness is, I think, very important for press councils. You need to be representative for the media landscape in your country. So be inclusive, allow as much as media organizations and media outlets as possible, and be transparent in the way you work, in the way you take decisions. And of course, we publish all our decisions, ask the media outlets to publish also your decisions. I think these can be means to prove that you work in an independent way. That could be an answer to the second question of Adeline. How do you define journalism? It's very difficult to define it. We try to do it in our press code, in our ethical code, but we didn't do it. And also, that's also one of the remarkable results of our survey, is that only 1 or 2 of the 28 press councils have a definition of journalism in their ethical code or in their statutes. And most of them say we decide case by case if, for instance, a publication on social media can be seen as journalism or not. Because it's very difficult to define journalism, because then you are going to exclude some things or to include too much. Then you are going to include all posts of all people on social media, and to define it as journalism, then it's impossible to work. So that's the case why most of the press councils that were in our survey say we decide case by case. When we get complaints about journalism on social media, we decide case by case whether it is journalism or not. And of course, we motivate, we argue our decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. There were actually some great answers to questions from Adeline. As we have Alexandra still here, and she was also, Peter mentioned her, would be great to have 30 seconds from you as a final word from the political world.
Yes, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting event. You probably know that MEPs have packed schedules, and I managed to at least listen the whole time. So I think that's proof of the quality of what you're doing here. And I think as an MEP and as a politician, but also as a citizen, I can only reiterate what I said very in the beginning, that we are extremely grateful for your work, because our democracy depends on it, and therefore never underestimate yourself and what you're doing. The only little thing I would like to redraw your attention to is the larger context. And really, sorry for repeating myself, but certainly the disinformation problem doesn't come from the dynamics in the traditional media. I mean, they're obviously strongly concerned by it because they can't avoid it and they have to deal with it somehow. But what I think we have to look at is the whole landscape of media and social media and how they interact. And just maybe as a very small last remark, when you were speaking about ethics and deontology, something that came to my mind was a recent study by Alexandra and Ingo Dachwitz. I think it's available in German too. I don't know if you know this, on the role of Google, for example, in media and how that influences statements also made and content. And this is something that I would be very, I don't know, you're probably already looking at that, but I'm looking at that with really huge concern, because, you know, we have a huge battle within the Digital Services Act coming up. And please consider that something that really concerns your work very, very directly. And I would be very, very happy to keep in touch with all of you. And in the meantime, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Excellent. Yes, actually, we had Alexandra Fanta, who was representing our report, our digital expert group, and there was a lot of interest in that. And of course, there is a need for follow-up, and also regarding the DSA, all these issues. So we will be very happy to keep in touch with you and with all of you. And I think we are getting to the end of this. I personally found very, very interesting online event with a lot of information that even still has to be digested, a lot of questions which always remain or even come up. And I'm very happy that we have this second project where we will deeper into the situation. It's true, self-regulation, as I also said at the beginning, cannot be seen independently of everything else. And the challenges are enormous out there, not only disinformation and conspiracy, but a lot of others. And that's why we have to keep doing the work, but why we have to keep outreaching to journalists, first of all, to civil society, to publishers. We need very much as well to keep the issue of quality and trustful news up, because with the help of the publishers also to invest in that, the work will be even more difficult. So we are also grateful that some of the publishers and media organizations we had here today. And we also had somebody from STARS, Natalie from STARS for Media. We are doing another project where we are trying to invest in creative, innovative journalistic work, always keeping ethics and trust very much as a criteria for any prize giving we are doing there. So thank you very much, all of you, and hope to see you all soon again. Happy New Year again. I think it's still possible to say that on the 11th of January. We all need a bit of luck, and see you soon. Thank you. And bye-bye.